My name is Esigie Aguele. Should I start? Okay. CEO for VerifyMe Nigeria. We are an ID tech and consumer insights company located in Nigeria, going into West Africa very shortly. I am honored to be standing before you today at one of the most impactful gatherings of tech leaders, innovators, investors in the world. We're united by one higher purpose today: a more connected ecosystem to drive growth in Africa. I lead an organization in the identity space, and as many will agree, in an increasingly digitized world, identity is emerging as a critical determinant of how we live our lives, interact, work, and access opportunities that are open to us. If you're in finance, which I expect many of us, folks at the DeFi stage are, the big news in town is that finance has major trust issues. A trust infrastructure is so important as a foundation for open finance and open banking, because almost every passing minute, there is a new technology or a new ruse in identity theft that keeps the industry on its toes. So as we try to adjust to the dizzying pace of disruptions, happenings within the ecosystem, I'd like to highlight some of the digital identity trends that I believe will shape the future. The pivotal role of that identity will play in shaping the future as well of open finance in Africa, and the opportunities and collaborations we can tap into to help the ecosystem actualize its potential. According to the World Bank, about half of the estimated 1.1 billion people around the world without any means of identification live in Africa. That means a large population of our 1.4 billion people, almost 50%, cannot legally lay claim to the rights and privileges of citizenship anywhere. They cannot vote, they cannot stand for elections, they cannot access government welfare programs, and typically are trapped in undignified labor. In finance, they are locked into the informal system and do not have access to banking and other quality financial services and products. And even where there are products supposedly targeted towards the unbanked segment, they are often or underrepresented in the product development and decision-making process, such that they feel inconvenienced, unsafe, disempowered, and ultimately abandon such systems. Equally worrisome are real national security and community security implications of having such a high number of unidentifiable persons within a system. Many people know the story of VerifyMe, where my co-founder and partner, Tunji Oluwole, and his family were poisoned and robbed by their cook in their home in Nigeria. We know how this one ended, where Tunji and his family are safe, but unable to get justice due to the lack of a compliant identity system in Nigeria at the time. And this, by the way, is how VerifyMe was born. In simple terms, digital identity ensures that when Tunji Oluwole, or me, or you, enter a transaction, we are entering into a trust relationship with people or entities that are actually who and what they claim they are. Digital identity ensures that payments are sent and received by known entities, thereby securing transactions. In the future, digital identity and payments may be almost indistinguishable. In fact, the question would be, is identity payments? Joseph Attic, the co-founder and co-chair of ID for Africa, defines digital identity as a platform consisting of a collection of technologies, processes, and policies that are integrated together to enable unique natural persons to prove unambiguously and securely who they are to an information system, and to empower them to assert their legal rights in that and within that digital context. At VerifyMe, we see digital identity as social empowerment. With the world getting more interconnected, an increase in peer-to-peer transactions, facilitating openness and transparency and lower cost is key. Digital identity will be critical to drive this. It's worth calling out that amid the push towards a universal digital identity agenda, the context of implementation differs significantly among rich and poor countries. In high-income countries, digital identity merely functions as an upgrade from legacy platforms of identification basically being transferred into a digital format. And this is driven by the demand for convenience and e-services. In lower income countries, it is really primarily an enabler to help countries achieve basic identification needs for a physical world, such as in enhancing national security. I've heard it said increasingly that identification without regulation is payments. For many of the 85% unbanked adults in sub-Saharan Africa, at 5% unbanked, very high, alternative finance initiatives like mobile payments are bridging the gap between identification in a physical world and financial inclusion. Indeed, the successes of this system has not escaped the rest of the world. In the United States Treasury Department now allows unbanked individuals in the US to receive their relief checks via mobile payments services as part of a paycheck protection program. Launched in 2009, India's biometric identity scheme Aadhaar is a global model for citizen and financial inclusion, backed by government will, public-private partnerships, and a strong identity backbone. Aadhaar is breaking access barriers for the country's remote and marginalized populations, estimated to constitute about 60% of the total population. The digital ID, alongside robust, credible, and affordable digital identification infrastructures, such as we have, by the way, at VerifyMe, are bringing up use cases that are stimulating the adoption of alternative finance initiatives for the masses. It is important to look at the progress identity has made in a bid to appreciate different dynamics within the ecosystem and how interactions between these elements can combine to impact our tomorrow. The first milestone is the increased adoption of a national ID scheme. Over 70 countries around the world currently employ a form of digital ID, serving as a foundation for a smarter future. Common adoptions include biometrics, electronic national cards, virtual documents, and mobile IDs. Some key developments within the last 10 years are worth highlighting. In the UK, for example, they launched the eID card scheme driven by the need to strengthen national security architecture, particularly to provide online identity protection, given the increasing convergence of civil and social economic life online. In June, the EU regulation mandated member states align security features on ID cards and passports. In 2014, Nigeria relaunched its national ID card scheme, recognized as the broadest financial inclusion program in Africa. Nigeria's eID functions as a national identity card, travel document, electronic ID, and strong biometric authentication and digital signature capabilities. I am proud to announce also that VerifyMe is one of the organizations licensed to provide a national ID to Nigerians and empower people. Additionally, by the way, technologies such as blockchain, ID wallets, biometric-enabled facial recognition are decentralizing digital identity frameworks, deepening access and enhancing user trust by giving individuals more control over their digital identities. Travel across countries, cross-border e-commerce, and mobility are facilitating new standards of compatibility and interoperability of digital identity platforms. For instance, IATA's Travel Pass, launched in December 2020, is a mobile app that helps travelers store and manage their COVID-19 tests and verify that on their phones. Of course, for us, COVID-19 accelerated a shift to the digital identity, or I would say digital-first service offerings, and thus led to an increase in digital identity and digital payments to fulfill these demands. This shift also showed the limitations of the traditional global banking system in providing the infrastructure required to fulfill these demands, and we have seen blockchain technologies, DeFi and crypto, step in to close the gap. Digital identity and eKYC became imperative in reducing fraud and fulfilling these demands. We have now spent some time going through the strides and milestones of digital identity. Now I'll just spend a few minutes talking about the digital identity trends that will shape the future, particularly in Africa. Digital identity will become the cornerstone of the new digital age, or Web3, as we like to call it, and the premise of this being that to effectively deliver services over the universe or metaverse, you need to identify and authenticate your users digitally and seamlessly. While the basic applications of digitization remain the same, from governance to healthcare to private sector businesses, organizations now have a pressing demand for speed in the supply of services. Currently, many financial institutions operate a hybrid system whereby the application starts on the internet and they have to go in person to show a physical ID card so that they can complete their transaction. Today, and going into the future much more, Financial institutions seeking to grow and even seeking to survive in their businesses will need to leverage companies like VerifyMe to onboard customers remotely and securely end-to-end for contactless services. The growth in internet penetration is accelerating digital transformation as well in Africa. I think GSMA says that we're going to have an increase in mobile phone usage, smartphone usage by 65% by 2025. If you look at Nigeria alone, I even think that number is quite conservative. And what's going to happen is, with these many people online, individuals, businesses, and governments will constantly be on the lookout for the most seamless and secure options to achieve digital identity checks and verifications. We will see less hybrid solutions where people are going into businesses and more full end-to-end digital solutions. In addition, a trend towards identity cards, carrying your identity on your phone, making payments by basically just looking at the camera, will continue to grow significantly, powered by trust infrastructures, of course, such as VerifyMe. We have all seen that the regulatory system for Web 2, are becoming insufficient for Web 3. As we innovate around standards to provide holistic digital identity solutions, regulators are pushing back against any fully decentralized privacy methods if it denies them access to security, oversight, and governance. Don't get me wrong, we need proper regulations to standardize and grow our ecosystem, but we must ensure these regulations enable and not stifle innovation. I see a future where there is increasing convergence between innovators and regulators that will work together to find solutions that work for all parties without compromising on standards, quality, and the identity, privacy, and ownership of one's data. We will see a rise in the importance of identity metadata or payments data. Answering the question, who are you, is not enough for businesses and the solutions of the new age. Digital identity solutions will start incorporating ID metadata, data sets that identifies not just who a person is, but what a person is, so that we can provide better services to them. We will see the rise in a new industry that leverages your digital identity with everyone's permission, of course, so always adhering to privacy concerns, and that will create models for preferences, affordability, and credibility analytics. Today, businesses are leveraging this data to innovate around solutions and provide tailor-made value-added services to users. We will see a continued surge to close the financing gap across our continent. The objectives of financial inclusion are shifting from bridging access barriers for vulnerable people to maintain high levels of safety and sound financial access. While increasing usage and quality of financial services is good, we're also going to see tokenization of identity ecosystems where the sensitive data will be masked and still allow consumers full access with their identity cross-platform using a not-so-sensitive number. With the explosion in online identity fraud and irreversible nature of smart contracts used in DeFi transactions, securing digital identity has become a key element in establishing trust in an increasingly digitized world. Recent innovations, combining blockchain with biometrics, are giving users better control over their digital identities and advancing the adoption of self-sovereign identity, where users can decide when and whom to share their data with. In the years ahead, the market will follow these initiatives, I believe. And finally, for more technology-advanced nations, a new concept of digital identity is emerging in the metaverse and Web 3.0. Lines between the real and virtual worlds will shrink further, making it essential to authenticate the true identities behind avatars to effectively provide a holistic trust infrastructure for the new world. Our traditional concepts of digital identity will shift as the metaverse objects gain value. Digital ID will be required to protect this as well. In conclusion, DeFi holds a lot of promise for the future. And the innovators within the space, and as innovators within the space, you are creating this future. Indeed, digital identity is at the core of that future. Africa stands to gain a lot as the ethos of decentralization or decentralized finance, backed by robust identity infrastructure, fits into our peculiarities. Here are a few ways that we will gain. One, we will enhance trust and transparency in public governance, public procurement, and social welfare programs. And two, We will increase economic development and prosperity, and the provision of a digital identity database will enable access for social services, and we really look at it as a social empowerment, and it will enhance people's quality of life. So what can we do? We can spread the word about digital identities. We can encourage more people to get their digital identities so that we don't have almost 50% of our continent not documented. We can build active collaborations as innovators in the space and engage regulators. For it is really within these conversation spaces that we will build the numbers, we will compound our efforts and generate the synergies that we need to build a strong and robust digital infrastructure for Africa. Thank you.